They expected silk. They expected ceremony, fragile smiles, and careful lies dressed as diplomacy. They did not expect the man behind her. The chamber of the High Concord hummed with quiet arrogance, a cathedral of glass and starlight suspended over a dying nebula. Representatives from 100 empires sat in concentric tiers, their forms ranging from elegant to grotesque, all united by one simple truth. They believed themselves safe. The doors parted with a soft hydraulic sigh. Ambassador Alara Vaz stepped through first, human, composed, draped in black and silver that reflected the chamber's cold light. Her expression was unreadable, her posture flawless. She looked exactly like what they had been briefed to expect, a minor species envoy from a newly contacted world, desperate to negotiate its place among giants. Polite. Contained. Harmless. And then he followed. Silence didn't fall immediately. It spread like a crack through ice. 7 feet of controlled violence in matte black combat plating, edges worn but meticulously maintained. No insignia. No rank. No visible allegiance. Just a single mark etched into the chest plate, a crude skull split down the center. His helmet was off. That made it worse. A human face, but not like hers. Not diplomatic. Not softened by civilization. His features were scarred, his jaw set like a weapon, and his eyes. His eyes moved. Not nervously. Not curiously. Calculating. Every exit. Every guard. Every ambassador. Every potential threat mapped and filed in seconds. The nearest security drones adjusted position. He noticed. Of course he noticed. The drones paused mid-hover, as if suddenly unsure of their purpose. Ambassador Vaz didn't look back at him. She didn't need to. "Esteemed delegates," she said, her voice smooth as polished steel. "I appreciate your time." A murmur rippled through the chamber, quickly suppressed. Finally, one of them spoke. Ambassador Threx of the Vol Collective leaned forward, his elongated neck coiling slightly as his multifaceted eyes locked onto the bodyguard. "That," Threx hissed, "is not standard diplomatic protocol." Vaz tilted her head just slightly. "No. You bring a Deathworlder into the High Concord?" A ripple of discomfort. Some leaned back. Others leaned in. The word carried weight. Deathworlder. Planets too hostile for most life. Gravity too strong. Predators too efficient. Evolution too cruel. Species from such worlds were anomalies. Unpredictable. Violent. Useful, sometimes, but never trusted. Vaz folded her hands behind her back. "I brought protection." Threx's mandibles clicked. "From whom?" The man behind her smiled. It wasn't friendly. "You," he said. The chamber froze. There it was, the first fracture. A dozen guards shifted. Weapons primed, but not yet raised. Protocol restrained them. Barely. Threx let out a low, irritated sound. "Your species is new. You misunderstand your position here." "Do we?" Vaz replied calmly. Another ambassador leaned forward, a towering, bioluminescent figure from the Sereti Dominion. "You stand before powers that have ruled this quadrant for millennia," it said, voice echoing like distant thunder. "Your world was catalogued less than a cycle ago. You are irrelevant." The bodyguard chuckled. Not loudly. But enough. "Funny," he muttered. "That's what the last empire said." A flicker of annoyance crossed the Serethi's glowing form. "Explain." The man didn't answer. Vaz did. "We're not here to request entry," she said. "We're here to discuss terms." "Terms?" Threx repeated, incredulous. "Yes." A pause. Then laughter. It spread quickly, different species, different sounds, all carrying the same message. Delusion. Vaz let them laugh. The bodyguard didn't. He just watched. Counting. Measuring. Waiting. When the laughter finally died, Threx leaned forward again. "You misunderstand your reality," he said. Your planet exists because it has not yet been deemed useful. A thinly veiled threat. Voss smiled faintly. You sent 3 expeditions. That stopped him. The chamber quieted again, curiosity replacing amusement. Threx's eyes narrowed. Exploratory missions. No, she said. Not exploratory. The bodyguard shifted his weight slightly. Armor creaked. Subtle. But every guard in the room reacted. Weapons rose a fraction. Your first fleet, Voss continued, entered our system under stealth. You deployed reconnaissance drones, harvested biological samples, tested atmospheric weapon dispersal. A ripple of tension spread outward. Threx said nothing. Your second fleet, she went on, didn't bother with stealth. You initiated orbital bombardment. Now the chamber was fully silent. The Seriki delegate dimmed slightly. That is a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, the bodyguard said. It's a confession you didn't get to finish. Every eye snapped to him. Threx's voice dropped, cold and sharp. And yet your species remains. The bodyguard's smile widened. Yeah, he said. Funny how that works. Voss took a slow step forward. We repelled both incursions. That was impossible. Everyone in the room knew it. A newly contacted species, pre-Concord, defeating 2 advanced fleets? No. Unless. You're lying, Threx said. The bodyguard shook his head slowly. No, he said. He's just embarrassed. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. The air felt different now. Thinner. He just, Threx said, though his voice lacked conviction. Not really, the bodyguard replied. Voss raised a hand slightly, enough to silence him. Your third fleet, she said quietly. And something changed. Something subtle. Something dangerous. Threx didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. You didn't send a third fleet, the Seriki said carefully. Voss met its gaze. No, she said. You didn't. The bodyguard took a step forward. Just one. The sound of his boot against the chamber floor echoed like a gunshot. We came to you, he said. Every security drone in the room locked onto him. Weapons fully raised now. Protocol was breaking. Fast. That's enough, Threx snapped. You will stand down or be removed. The bodyguard looked at the drones. Then at Threx. Then back at the drones. Go ahead, he said softly. One of the guards twitched. That was all it took. The drone fired. A beam of concentrated plasma, fast enough to vaporize steel. And the man was already moving. Not dodging. Intercepting. He stepped into the shot. The beam struck his chest. Light flared. And bent. The energy diffused across his armor, dispersing like water hitting stone. For half a second, the entire chamber forgot how to exist. Then he moved again. Fast. Too fast. He crossed the distance between himself and the nearest drone in less than a heartbeat, grabbed it midair, and crushed it in one hand. Metal screamed. Circuits sparked. Silence followed. He dropped the remains. They hit the floor with a dull, final sound. No one spoke. No one moved. The remaining drones hesitated. That was their second mistake. Don't, Voss said calmly. The word carried weight. Not authority. Certainty. The drones froze. The chamber held its breath. The bodyguard rolled his shoulders slightly, as if loosening up. Relax, he said. I'm being polite. Threx's voice was tight now. What are you? The man tilted his head. Retired, he said. A faint chuckle escaped him. Mostly. Voss stepped forward again, reclaiming the center of the room as if nothing had happened. As I was saying, she continued, we're here to discuss terms. No one laughed this time. No one interrupted. Because for the first time since humanity had entered the room, they were no longer being seen as harmless. They were being measured. And something about the result didn't sit right. Voss's voice softened, just slightly. You sent 2 fleets, she said. You didn't send a third. A pause. Then she smiled. We did. The bodyguard looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of creatures who had never known fear from something smaller than themselves. Until now. And then he said the one thing that turned the silence into something far worse. You didn't find us, he said. We found you first. The silence didn't break. It tightened, like a noose being pulled one careful inch at a time. No one in the chamber moved, not the guards, not the drones, not even the ancient delegates whose species had survived extinction-level wars and devoured star systems whole. They had all felt it. That shift. Predator recognition. Ambassador Threx recovered first, though the effort showed in the minute tremor along his elongated frame. You expect us to believe, he said slowly, that a pre-Concord species not only repelled 2 fleets, but infiltrated the High Concord itself? The bodyguard snorted. Infiltrated? He muttered. That's a generous word. Voss didn't smile this time. We didn't sneak in, she said. We waited. For what? The Serity delegate asked. The bodyguard answered before she could. For you to prove our point. A flicker of irritation, no unease, passed through the chamber. Threx leaned forward. And what point is that? Voss turned slowly, taking in the entire assembly. That you are exactly what we hoped you'd be, she said. A pause. Predictable. That landed harder than any threat. The bodyguard folded his arms, armor plates shifting with a low mechanical whisper. You build empires the same way every time, he said. Expand. Extract. Subjugate. Repeat. A few delegates bristled. One of the smaller envoys, something insectoid, kite and gleaming under the chamber lights, clicked sharply. You speak as if you understand us. The bodyguard looked at it. Really looked. Kid, he said flatly. We've been you. That drew a reaction. A sharp one. The insectoid recoiled slightly. Impossible. Not really, he said. We just did it faster. Dirtier. And to our own species first. That lingered. Even the Serity dimmed further, bioluminescence fading into a cautious glow. Threx's voice hardened. History is irrelevant. Power is not. Voss nodded. Agreed. She took another step forward. And that's why you sent fleets instead of ambassadors. No denial. No rebuttal. Just silence. Your first mistake, she continued, was assuming we'd respond like everyone else. And your second? Threx asked. The bodyguard grinned. Thinking we'd stop at defense. Something cold moved through the chamber. A realization. Slow. Unwelcome. Threx's gaze sharpened. You claim retaliation. Not claim, Voss said. Confirm. A ripple of tension spread outward like a shockwave. You're bluffing, one of the outer delegates snapped. There has been no reported incursion into Concord space. The bodyguard chuckled again. Yeah, he said. That's kind of the point. The Serity leaned forward now, fully engaged. Explain. Voss didn't. Instead, she looked at her bodyguard. He sighed. Fine, he muttered. Story time. He stepped forward, just slightly ahead of her now, not out of disrespect, but because he clearly didn't care about their protocols. Your second fleet, he said. The one that tried to glass our oceans? Threx stiffened. We tracked it. A flicker of surprise. Not hard, he added. You guys leave a hell of a trail when you think no one's watching. He began pacing slowly, like a man recalling an old war he hadn't quite finished. We didn't chase it right away. That would have been emotional. Reactive. He glanced at Voss. We don't do that anymore. She didn't respond. He kept walking. We let it run. Let it jump back through your relay network. Let it report. The chamber leaned in, collectively, despite itself. You let it go? The Sereti asked. Of course, he said. We needed a map. That word hit hard. A few of the more experienced delegates shifted in their seats. Map. Not revenge. Not survival. Preparation. We tagged the flagship. He continued casually. Quantum tracer. Real subtle. Rode it through your network like a tourist on a guided tour. Threx's composure cracked, just slightly. That's impossible, he snapped. Our relays are shielded. Yeah, the bodyguard cut in. Unhackable. Impenetrable. Seen it before. Said it ourselves once. He stopped pacing. Looked directly at Threx. Didn't stop us either. Silence again. But now it wasn't just tension. It was fear trying to understand itself. Voss stepped in smoothly. Over the next 8 of your cycles, she said, we mapped 32 primary relay hubs, 12 military shipyards, and 4 central command nexuses. A few delegates physically recoiled. Threx's voice dropped to a whisper. That information is classified beyond your control? The bodyguard finished. He shrugged. Yeah. We noticed. The chamber's lighting seemed colder now. Sharper. Like the illusion of safety had been stripped away. You're lying, another delegate insisted, though the conviction was gone. Am I? Voss asked softly. She raised a hand. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, the chamber's central display flickered. Once. Twice. Then it came alive. Not with the Concord's emblem, but with something else. A rotating star map. Highlighted points. Dozens of them. Each one pulsing red. The room erupted, not in chaos, but in something worse. Controlled panic. What is this? The Sereti demanded. The bodyguard answered quietly. Your backyard. Threx surged to his full height. Shut that down! No one moved. Because no one could. The system wasn't responding. It's already inside your network, Voss said. Been there a while. The map zoomed in. One of the red points expanded, revealing a massive orbital structure. A shipyard. Ships under construction. Defenses active. Operational. Secure. Or at least, it had been. The image shifted. Time lapse. Fast forward. And then, darkness. Power failures cascading across the structure like a disease. Explosions, controlled, precise, surgical. Docked vessels tearing themselves apart as their own systems turned against them. No incoming fleet. No external assault. Just internal collapse. The chamber watched in horror. That was 3 cycles ago, the bodyguard said. You didn't notice. The map shifted again. Another point. Another installation. Same result. Then another. And another. 4 in total. Gone. Erased. Without a single shot fired from outside. This is a fabrication, one delegate shouted. Voss didn't even look at them. You're welcome to verify, she said. Threx didn't speak. Didn't move. Because he already knew. He could feel it. The gaps. The delays. The reports that never quite lined up. The ships that stopped responding. The silence he had chosen to ignore. The bodyguard exhaled slowly. We're not here to wipe you out, he said. That surprised them. Even now. Even after everything. Then why? The Sereti asked. And for the first time. Voss hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. The bodyguard answered instead. Because you knocked on our door, he said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. And we decided to answer. He stepped closer to the center of the chamber. No one tried to stop him. No one could. You sent fleets to test us, he continued. To see if we'd fold. If we'd beg. If we'd break. He shook his head slowly. Wrong species. A long pause. Then Voss spoke again, her voice steady, but colder now. "We are offering terms," she said. Threx finally found his voice. "What terms could you possibly?" "Leave us alone. Simple. Clean. Absolute." The chamber stared at her. "That's it?" the Cerati asked. Voss nodded. "You will cease all incursions into human-controlled space. You will dismantle any observation programs targeting our systems. You will recognize our sovereignty. And if we refuse?" Threx asked quietly. The bodyguard didn't smile this time. Didn't joke. Didn't move. "That depends," he said. "On what?" He looked around the chamber one last time. At the empires. At the power. At the arrogance that had ruled this place for millennia. Then he said it. "On how many more red dots you want to see disappear." The map pulsed behind him. Dozens of targets. All already marked. All already vulnerable. All already chosen. And for the first time in the history of the High Concord, the room wasn't silent because of protocol. It was silent because every species present realized the same thing at once. Humanity hadn't come to join the galaxy. They had come to redraw it. Silence, once a symbol of control in the High Concord, had turned into something far more primitive. Fear, raw, unfiltered, and spreading. No one spoke immediately. Not because they had nothing to say, but because every calculation they had ever trusted was collapsing in real time. Empires didn't get blindsided. Not like this. Not by something new. Ambassador Threx's breathing had changed. Subtle, but to those who knew his species, it was the closest thing to panic they would ever show. "You expect compliance," he said finally, voice low and coiled. "Based on sabotage and theatrics?" The bodyguard tilted his head. "Theatrics?" he repeated. Then he glanced at Voss. "She want to tell him, or should I?" Voss didn't answer. That was answer enough. The bodyguard sighed. "You really think this is the show?" he asked. Something in his tone made a few delegates shift uncomfortably. "You think we'd walk into the center of your little empire with just a slideshow and a speech?" A pause. Then, "You're not paying attention." The chamber lights flickered. Just once. But that was all it took. Every system in the room immediately ran diagnostics, automatic, instantaneous, deeply embedded failsafes designed over centuries. They found nothing wrong. Which made it worse. The Cerati delegate leaned forward sharply. "What did you do?" The bodyguard didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached up and tapped the side of his neck. A faint click. Voss closed her eyes for half a second. Not fear. Not hesitation. Timing. When she opened them again, something had changed. "No," she said quietly. "You listen." The chamber sealed. Not visibly. Not dramatically. But every exit, every hidden corridor, every emergency transit path, locked down in the same instant. No alarms. No warnings. Just denial. Threx surged upright. "Override!" Nothing happened. "Override!" Still nothing. The realization hit like a physical blow. The Concord, this chamber, this sacred center of galactic authority, was no longer under their control. The bodyguard cracked his neck slightly. "Relax," he said. "You're safe. A beat. For now." Weapons came up, this time fully. No more hesitation. Dozens of guards, dozens of species, each armed with technology capable of ending civilizations. All aimed at one man. He didn't react. Didn't even look impressed. "You really want to try that again?" he asked. Threx hissed. "You will stand down." "Or what?" The bodyguard shot back instantly. The question hung there. Because for the first time, there was no clear answer. Voss stepped forward, her voice cutting cleanly through the tension. "This isn't an attack," she said. That got a reaction. Sharp. Confused. Disbelieving. "Then what is it?" the Cerati demanded. Voss met its gaze. "A demonstration." The word landed heavy. Measured. Deliberate. The bodyguard spread his arms slightly, as if presenting the room itself. "You've been looking at humanity like we're a problem to solve," he said. "A resource to evaluate. A species to categorize." He lowered his arms. "That was your third mistake." Threx's voice dropped to something dangerous. "And the first two?" The bodyguard smiled faintly. "Sending fleets," he said. "And surviving long enough to regret it." A ripple of anger passed through the chamber. Fear was still there, but now it had teeth. Good. Anger made people predictable. And humans loved predictable enemies. "You believe intimidation will grant you leverage," Threx said, regaining some of his composure. "It will not. The Concord does not bow to threats." "No," Voss said softly. "You fracture under them." That hit harder than anything before. Because it wasn't just an insult. It was analysis. The chamber stirred. Different species exchanging glances. Subtle shifts in posture. Tiny recalculations. The unity of the Concord had always been fragile. Built on mutual benefit. Maintained by mutual fear. And now? That balance was cracking. The bodyguard saw it instantly. Of course he did. "Go on," he said, almost amused. "Tell them." Voss didn't hesitate. "You've already started blaming each other," she said. "Internal security failures. Missing fleets. Disrupted infrastructure." A few delegates stiffened. "You think this is contained," she continued. "You think this is a localized breach. A singular anomaly." She shook her head. "It isn't." The central display shifted again. New data. Live data. Fleet movements. Resource allocations. Emergency signals. All layered over the existing map. But now the red dots were spreading. Not exploding. Not vanishing. Spreading. "What is this?" someone whispered. The bodyguard answered. "Contagion." The word echoed. "Not biological. Worse. Systemic. You built everything on interconnected networks," he said. "Command relays, defense grids, logistics chains. Efficient. Elegant." He shrugged. "Fragile." The Sarathi's glow flickered erratically. "You're claiming total infiltration." "No," Voss said. "Not total." A pause. "Not yet." That landed like a hammer. Threx's voice cut through, sharp and furious. "You think this gives you control? This gives you war." The bodyguard's expression didn't change. "Good," he said. The chamber froze again. Not from silence. From that single word. "Good." "You want war?" Threx demanded. The bodyguard stepped forward. Slow. Deliberate. Every movement controlled. "No," he said. "Not want." Another step. Prepared. And then the twist hit. Hard. Because he smiled. Not cruelly. Not mockingly. But like a man finally telling a truth he'd been holding back. "You've been fighting each other for centuries," he said. "Border skirmishes. Resource disputes. Proxy wars." His gaze swept across the chamber. "We studied all of it." Voss didn't interrupt. Didn't soften it. Didn't reframe it. Because this part was his. "We learned from you," he continued. "Every dirty trick. Every underhanded play. Every way you justify tearing each other apart." He stopped at the center of the room. Right beneath the floating map. "And then we asked ourselves a question." A pause. Dead silence. "What happens," he said quietly, "if we don't play by your rules?" The answer was already unfolding behind him. The spreading red. The shifting fleets. The subtle, creeping collapse of trust. "You're not attacking us," the Sarathi said slowly. Understanding dawning. "You're letting you attack each other," Voss finished. The chamber erupted, not in violence, but in something far more dangerous. Accusations? Sharp, immediate, instinctive. You compromised our relays. Your fleets went dark first. This is your doing. No, this is yours. Voices overlapped. Allies turned suspicious. Rivals turned hostile. Centuries of fragile balance began to tear at the seams. Threx shouted for order. No one listened. Because the worst part was that they couldn't tell what was real anymore. Which signals were true. Which attacks were genuine. Which failures were sabotage. And which were each other. The bodyguard stepped back beside Voss, watching the chaos unfold. See? He murmured. Told you they'd do it themselves. Voss didn't smile. Because this wasn't victory. Not yet. This was the beginning of something uglier. Something irreversible. Threx slammed a limb against his platform, finally forcing a moment of silence. This changes nothing, he roared. We will isolate the breach. We will purge your infection. And then what? The bodyguard cut in. The question hit like a blade. Send another fleet? A beat. You don't have one to spare. The map flickered again. New data. More red. More disruption. More collapse. Voss stepped forward one last time. Her voice calm. Cold. Final. You asked what happens if you refuse our terms? She said. No one interrupted now. No one dared. This, she said simply. The chamber felt smaller. Tighter. Like it was closing in on itself. You don't lose to us, she continued. You lose to what you already are. A long silence followed. Heavy. Unavoidable. Because deep down, every species in that room knew she was right. The bodyguard exhaled slowly. War's already started, he said. He looked around the chamber one last time. At the fear. The anger. The unraveling control. You just don't know who you're fighting yet. And that was the most terrifying part of all. The High Concord chamber was no longer a courtroom. It had become a fracture point. Not of walls or glass or steel, but of certainty itself. Empires that had survived supernova wars now found themselves arguing over corrupted sensor feeds. Fleet commanders were accusing their own intelligence branches of treason. Entire species were rerouting defenses against ghost signals they could no longer prove weren't real. And in the center of it all, two humans stood still, watching it burn without ever lighting a match. Ambassador Threx was no longer composed. His authority, once absolute in this chamber, was being eaten alive by panic he could not redirect. This is an engineered collapse, he snapped, pointing a trembling limb at Voss. A coordinated psychological assault, the Serity delegate responded instantly. Or your fleet failures are real and you are deflecting. Lies, Threx roared. Evidence suggests otherwise. Another voice cut in. Then another. Then another. The chamber had become what humanity had predicted from the beginning. Not unified power. Just competing fear. Voss finally moved again. Slowly. Calmly. Like someone stepping into the last act of a play she had already read. This is why we didn't negotiate through your military channels, she said. Her voice carried differently now. Not louder. Just clearer. Because no one was drowning her out anymore. They were too busy drowning each other. The bodyguard cracked his knuckles once. The sound echoed unnaturally loud in the chaos. Funny thing about empires, he muttered. They don't fall when you hit them. He glanced at Voss. They fall when they stop trusting their own shadows. A nearby guard lifted a weapon. Then hesitated. Not because of fear of humanity, but because its commander had just ordered a contradictory response through a corrupted relay. The weapon lowered. That single hesitation spread. Like infection in reverse. The Serity delegate dimmed, its bioluminescence flickering unevenly. You're not just disrupting systems, it realized aloud. You're mapping our decision loops. The bodyguard nodded once. Congratulations, he said. You're catching up. Threx turned sharply. You will not leave this chamber alive. That was meant to sound like control. It didn't. It sounded like desperation. Voss looked at him for a long moment. Not angry. Not afraid. Just tired in a way that suggested this conversation had happened 1,000 times before in human history. You still think this is about survival? She said quietly. It's not. A pause. It's about dominance of assumptions. Threx didn't understand. That was obvious. So the bodyguard translated. You thought we'd react like everyone else, he said. Trade. Threaten. Escalate. Collapse. He stepped forward slightly. We don't. A beat. We adapt faster than you can agree on what's real. That landed harder than any weapon discharge. Because it wasn't strength. It was inevitability. A flicker of movement rippled through the chamber, some delegates trying to reassert control, others trying to flee, others still attempting to stabilize failing systems. But it was too late. The structure of trust had already failed. And in its place, something far more primal was emerging. Isolation. Every empire for itself. Every signal suspect. Every ally potentially compromised. Threx realized it at the same time as the rest. His voice dropped, hollow. This is not war, he said. The bodyguard nodded. No. A pause. This is containment. That word changed everything. Because war implied sides. Victory. Defeat. Endings. Containment implied something worse. Management. Long-term suppression. Controlled pressure. No final battle. No heroic stand. Just ongoing pressure until collapse became routine. The Serity delegate dimmed further. You are treating us like an infection. Voss didn't deny it. We are treating you like a system, she corrected. And all systems can be understood. Even that was worse. Because it meant there was no hatred. No rage. No emotional anchor to exploit. Just cold, procedural inevitability. Threx backed away slightly, finally understanding the scale of what was happening. You are not a young species, he said slowly. The bodyguard smiled faintly. No, he agreed. We're just new to you. A distant alarm finally triggered, late, broken, irrelevant. But no one responded. Because every authority chain had already fractured. Voss turned slightly toward the bodyguard. Phase 3 is complete, she said. He exhaled. Good, he muttered. I was getting bored. That earned a ripple of confused horror from nearby delegates. Because boredom, in a species like him, was not comfort. It was precedent. Threx's voice cracked slightly. What is Phase 3? The bodyguard looked at him. And for the first time, there was no humor in his expression. Reality check, he said. Then he reached up, tapped his collar again. And every display in the chamber died. Not flickered. Not glitched. Died. Complete blackout. Gasps erupted instantly. But then, voices. Not in the chamber. In their comms. In their fleets. In their internal channels. Every species hearing fragments of the same message. Unidentified human control protocol active. Networks compromised. Trust layer failure imminent. Threx staggered slightly. What is that? The bodyguard answered quietly. That's your systems realizing we stopped pretending. Voss stepped closer to him now. We didn't destroy your empires, she said. We just removed your ability to pretend they're stable. The Serity spoke, barely audible now. What do you want? That question hung in the chamber like a final surrender. Voss considered it. Then answered honestly. Space. A pause. Distance. The bodyguard added, almost casually. And time. Threx stared at them. That's it. The bodyguard nodded once. That's everything. A long silence followed. Not peaceful. Not resolved. Just the quiet aftermath of something too large to process all at once. Then Voss stepped back toward the doors. The exit unlocked. Just for them. As if it had been waiting the entire time. The bodyguard followed her, then paused at the threshold. He looked back one last time at the fractured chamber of ancient powers. Empires unraveling. Allies reevaluating survival math. Trust collapsing into isolated survival instincts. And he smiled again. Not cruel. Not kind. Just factual. You ever notice something about death worlds? He said. No one answered. So he did. They don't produce monsters, he said. They filter out everything that can't survive them. A beat. And then you send fleets into ours, expecting us to still be the ones that can't. He turned away. The doors sealed behind them. Softly. Cleanly. Final. Outside, the station hummed with distant alarm cycles that no one inside the chamber could properly coordinate anymore. Inside. The high Concord had not fallen. Not yet. But it had been diagnosed. And humanity had just handed it the prescription. Voss walked in silence for a moment before speaking. That went better than expected. The bodyguard snorted. Yeah, he said. Give it a week. They'll either unify or implode. And us? He glanced sideways at her. We'll still be the problem they can't solve. A pause. Then he added, almost amused. Which means we did our job. Behind them, the galaxy quietly adjusted its understanding of humanity. Not as newcomers. Not as underdogs. But as something far more inconvenient. A species that didn't need to conquer empires. Just to make them doubt they deserved to exist the way they did. And somewhere in the dark between stars, 100 fleets recalculated what safe really meant.